The emergency room fluorescent lights made everything look worse than it was, but in my case, that wasn't saying much. My left arm hung at an angle that made the nurse who checked me in actually gasp, and the pain had gone from screaming to this dull, sick throb that told me I was probably going into shock. I kept my right hand pressed against my ribs, pretty sure at least 2 of them were cracked, and tried not to think about how I was going to explain this to anyone who asked. I didn't have to wait long. "Emma Richardson?" A young doctor appeared, clipboard in hand, concern creasing his boyish face. "Let's get you into a room." I followed him on unsteady legs, my cheap ballet flats squeaking against the linoleum. The room was small, cold, and smelled like antiseptic and fear. As he began his examination, his questions came carefully. Too carefully. How did this happen? "I fell," I said automatically. The lie tasted like copper in my mouth. His eyes met mine, and I saw he didn't believe me. No one ever did. But what was I supposed to say? That my boyfriend of 3 years had a rage problem? That tonight I'd made the mistake of questioning why he came home at 2 in the morning smelling like perfume and whiskey? That Marcus had grabbed my arm and twisted until I heard the snap, then shoved me into the coffee table for good measure? "Emma, if someone hurt you..." "I fell down the stairs," I said firmly. "It was clumsy. I'm fine." He sighed but didn't push. They never did. He ordered x-rays and left me alone with my shame. That's when the door opened again, and my entire life changed. He filled the doorway like a storm rolling in off the ocean. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a black suit that probably cost more than my car. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, all sharp angles and intensity. But it was his eyes that stopped my heart. Pale gray, like winter ice, and fixed on me with an expression I couldn't read. "Wrong room," I managed, my voice smaller than I wanted. He stepped inside and closed the door behind him with a quiet click that sounded far too final. "I don't think so." A second man followed him in, older, with silver threaded through his dark hair and the kind of presence that made you want to stand up straight even when you had broken ribs. He took one look at me, and something dangerous flickered across his face. "Nico," he said quietly. "Look at her arm." The first man, Nico, moved closer, and I instinctively tried to lean away. Pain shot through my side, and I gasped. He stopped immediately, holding up one hand. "I'm not going to hurt you." His voice was deep, controlled, but underneath I heard something sharp. "But I need you to answer a question." "I don't know who you are," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. "You need to leave." "Who the fuck broke your arm?" The profanity was so casual, so at odds with the expensive suit and the way he held himself, that I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, tears burned behind my eyes, because nobody had asked it like that before. Not "how did this happen?" with that practiced concern, but who? Like he already knew I hadn't fallen, and he was giving me permission to tell the truth. "It doesn't matter," I whispered. "It matters to me." He pulled up a chair and sat down slowly, like he was trying not to spook a wounded animal. Up close, I could see the scar along his jawline, the expensive watch on his wrist, the absolute certainty in his eyes. "My name is Nico Salvatore. This is my father, Dominic, and you're sitting in a hospital bed with injuries that someone gave you on purpose." Salvatore. Even I, with my quiet life working at a bookstore and avoiding anything more exciting than a Saturday farmer's market, had heard that name. Everyone in the city had. The Salvatore family ran everything that mattered: construction, real estate, half the restaurants in the Italian district. And if the whispers were true, a lot of things that weren't exactly legal. "I'm fine," I said again, the automatic response. "You're not." Dominic spoke for the first time, his voice gentler than his son's but somehow more frightening. "And lying about it won't keep you safe, sweetheart." "Why do you even care?" The question came out sharper than I intended. "You don't know me." Nico leaned forward, elbows on his knees, those winter eyes pinning me in place. 3 months ago, my cousin opened a construction site on Morrison Avenue. Your apartment building is across the street. I've seen you walking to work every morning at 7:45. You stop at the coffee shop on the corner, order something that's too sweet to be actual coffee, and you always smile at the owner even when he shorts you on change. My breath caught. He'd been watching me? That's creepy. That's protection. He didn't look apologetic. The sight's on our territory. We pay attention to who's around. And this week I noticed bruises on your wrist. Yesterday you were limping. Tonight you show up here looking like someone used you as a punching bag, and you expect me to walk away? Yes, I said desperately. That's exactly what I expect. This isn't your business. Everything in this city is my business? He stood up, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. So, I'll ask one more time. Who did this to you? I wanted to tell him. God, I wanted to say Marcus's name so badly it ached worse than my broken bones. But I'd learned the hard way what happened when I tried to ask for help. The one time I'd called the police, Marcus had charmed them, showed them our couple photos, convinced them I was just being dramatic. Then he'd made sure I understood what happened to women who couldn't keep their mouths shut. No one, I said. It was an accident. Nico studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay. Then you won't mind if one of my men waits outside your hospital room tonight? Just in case you have any more accidents. I can't afford a bodyguard. Did I ask you to pay? He was already heading for the door. Get some rest, Emma. We'll talk in the morning. They left before I could argue, the door clicking shut behind them. I sat there in the sudden silence, my arm throbbing, my head spinning, trying to figure out what the hell had just happened. The doctor came back eventually. He x-rayed my arm, fractured radius and ulna, clean breaks that would need a cast for at least 8 weeks. He wrapped my ribs, gave me painkillers that made everything fuzzy, and admitted me overnight for observation. By the time they wheeled me to a regular room, it was past midnight, and I was so exhausted I barely noticed the large man in a dark suit sitting in a chair outside my door. I noticed in the morning, though. He was still there. Different suit, fresh cup of coffee, reading a newspaper like he had nowhere else in the world to be. Hi, I ventured, holding my phone in my good hand. I'd been about to call Marcus, tell him where I was, before I remembered that was a spectacularly terrible idea. The man looked up and nodded. Miss Richardson, I'm Tony. Mr. Salvatore asked me to make sure you're safe. I'm in a hospital. I'm pretty safe. With respect, ma'am, hospitals have doors. Doors can be opened by people you might not want to see. He had a point. Marcus would come looking for me eventually. He always did, full of apologies and promises, and that smile that used to make me believe things could be different. The smile I'd stopped trusting 6 months ago when the accidents started happening more frequently. Can I ask you something? I kept my voice low. The Salvatore family. Are they really businessmen? Tony said smoothly. Very successful businessmen who take care of their interests. That was a diplomatic way of saying yes. They were exactly what everyone said they were. I should have been terrified. Instead, I felt something uncomfortably close to relief. Nico returned around 10, carrying a bag from the Italian bakery 3 blocks from my apartment. The smell of fresh bread and espresso made my stomach growl, despite the anxiety churning through me. You haven't eaten, he said, setting the bag on the rolling tray. Not a question. Hospital breakfast was included. Hospital breakfast is garbage. He unpacked cornetti, still warm, and a proper cappuccino in a to-go cup. Eat. I wanted to refuse on principle. I didn't know this man, didn't owe him anything, shouldn't accept gifts from someone who probably had blood on his hands. But the cornetto smelled like heaven, and I was so hungry, and nobody had taken care of me like this in longer than I could remember. Thank you, I said quietly, reaching for the pastry with my good hand. He watched me eat with that same intense focus from last night, like I was a puzzle he was trying to solve. The doctor said you can be discharged this afternoon. I'll call a friend to pick me up. No need. I'll take you home. Mr. Salvatore. Nico. Nico, I amended. You don't have to do this. I appreciate your concern, but I'm not your responsibility. You are now. He said it like it was the simplest thing in the world. You're under my protection. That makes you my responsibility. I didn't ask for protection. You shouldn't have to." He leaned back in his chair, and I caught a glimpse of something dark in his expression. "Tell me about him." "There's nothing to tell. Emma." My name in his voice sounded different, softer but somehow more intense. I've spent 20 years reading people. I know fear when I see it. I know what it looks like when someone's been hurt too many times to believe help is coming. So either you tell me who did this, or I'll find out myself, and I promise you won't like my methods. I believed him. That was the terrifying part. I absolutely believed he would tear apart my entire life until he found the answer he wanted. "His name is Marcus Webb," I heard myself say. "We've been together for 3 years. He works in finance. Everyone thinks he's perfect. But he's not." "No," the word came out broken. "He's not." "How long has he been hurting you?" 6 months, maybe longer. It started small, grabbing my arm too hard during an argument, pushing me when he was drunk. I kept thinking it would stop if I just tried harder, if I could be what he needed. I laughed, but it sounded like crying. Last night I asked the wrong question. He broke my arm. Then he told me if I went to the police, he'd make sure everyone knew what a lying, crazy bitch I was. Nico's expression didn't change, but his hands curled into fists on his knees. "Where does he live?" "The same apartment as me. He moved in 8 months ago." "Not anymore." He pulled out his phone and typed something quickly. "Tony will pack your things this afternoon. You're not going back there." "I can't just leave. I have a lease. My job." "Your lease is ending in 2 months, according to public records. I'll handle the early termination. As for your job, the bookstore on Fletcher Street, you'll keep it if you want it. But you're not living somewhere he knows how to find you." My head spun. "You can't just rearrange my entire life." "Watch me." He stood up, all controlled power and absolute certainty. "You have 2 choices, Emma. You can fight me on this, go back to your apartment and wait for him to finish what he started. Or you can trust that I'm trying to help you." "Why?" The question burst out of me. "Why do you even care? You don't know me." For the first time, something almost vulnerable crossed his face. "My mother," he said quietly. "When I was 8 years old, my father was building his business. He was gone a lot and she was alone, and her brother thought that meant he could put his hands on her. She hid it for months. By the time my father found out," he stopped, jaw tight. "My uncle disappeared. My mother lived. But I've never forgotten what she looked like trying to hide bruises and pretend everything was fine." "Oh, I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Just let me help you." What choice did I have? Marcus knew where I lived, where I worked, where I got coffee every morning. If I went back, he'd be sorry and sweet until the next time he wasn't. And eventually, next time might be the last time. "Okay," I whispered. "Okay." The relief on Nico's face was unmistakable. "Good. I'll handle the discharge paperwork. Tony will take you to a safe house, one of my properties in the North End. You'll stay there until we sort this out." "Sort this out how?" His smile was cold enough to frost glass. "Let me worry about that." He left, and I sat there with my half-eaten cornetto, trying to process what I'd just agreed to. I'd put myself under the protection of a man who was probably a criminal, who definitely had the kind of power that made people nervous, who'd been watching me for months without my knowledge. I should have been terrified. Instead, for the first time in 6 months, I felt like I could breathe. The safe house was beautiful. I hadn't expected that. When Nico said safe house, I'd pictured something grim and utilitarian. Instead, Tony pulled up in front of a renovated brownstone with flower boxes in the windows, and a bright red door that looked like something from a magazine. "It's the boss's personal property," Tony explained, helping me out of the car with careful hands that avoided my injuries. "He stays here sometimes when he doesn't want to go home to the family estate." Inside was even better. Hardwood floors, exposed brick, a kitchen that made my tiny apartment galley look like a closet. Someone had already stocked the fridge and left fresh flowers on the counter. "There's a panic button in every room," Tony showed me, pointing to small black devices mounted discreetly on the walls. "You press it, you'll have 5 armed men here in under 3 minutes." "Is that really necessary?" His expression was kind but firm. Mr. Salvatore doesn't take chances with people under his protection. People under his protection. That was me now, apparently. Tony left after making sure I had everything I needed. I stood in the silent apartment, my arm heavy in its cast, and tried to figure out what happened next. My phone buzzed, 17 missed calls from Marcus, each voicemail escalating from concerned to angry to absolutely furious. I deleted them without listening and blocked his number with shaking hands. That's when I heard the key in the lock. My heart stopped. Had Marcus found me already? How? But it was Nico who walked in, carrying more bags than one person should be able to hold. I picked up some things I thought you might need. Clothes, toiletries, books. I remembered you work at a bookstore. Figured you might like to read. I stared at him. You went shopping for me? I had someone do it, he corrected, setting everything down on the couch. But I supervised the book selection personally. I wasn't sure what you liked, so I got a variety. This dangerous man, this probably criminal with blood on his hands and ice in his eyes, had personally selected books for me. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Thank you, I managed, for all of this. I don't know how I'll ever... You don't owe me anything. He crossed to where I stood, moving slowly like he had in the hospital. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why did you stay with him? After the first time he hurt you, why didn't you leave? It was the question everyone asked, like the answer was simple, like leaving was just a matter of wanting it badly enough. Because he made me believe I deserved it, I said honestly. He'd hurt me, then he'd cry and say he was sorry, that I'd pushed him too far, that if I just tried harder to make him happy, it wouldn't happen again. And I believed him. I believed that if I could just be perfect enough, small enough, quiet enough, he'd love me the way he did in the beginning. Nico's jaw clenched. And now? Now I know he never loved me. He loved having control, and I'm done giving it to him. Something blazed in his eyes, fierce and possessive. Good. Because nobody puts their hands on you again. Nobody hurts you. Nobody makes you feel small. You understand me? I nodded, not trusting my voice. I have to go handle some business, he said, stepping back with visible effort. But Tony's outside and I'll be back later to check on you. You need anything at all, you call me. He handed me a card with a single phone number on it. Day or night, Emma, I mean it. After he left, I stood in the beautiful apartment holding his card, feeling like I'd stepped into someone else's life. This morning, I'd been lying to a doctor about how I broke my arm. Tonight, I was under the protection of one of the most powerful families in the city, and a man with winter eyes was promising nobody would hurt me again. I should have been scared of what he might do to Marcus. I wasn't. Nico returned around midnight. I was still awake, unable to sleep despite the painkillers, when I heard his key in the lock. He looked different, tie gone, jacket missing, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms marked with old scars. There was blood on his knuckles. Is that yours? I asked before I could stop myself. He glanced down. No. Marcus? Marcus is currently explaining himself to some associates of mine. He'll be doing that for a while. His voice was flat, empty of emotion. He won't bother you again. I should have asked what that meant. Should have demanded details. Insisted he tell me exactly what he'd done. But some part of me, the part that had lived in fear for 6 months, didn't want to know. Didn't care. Was maybe even grateful. Thank you, I said quietly. Don't thank me for that. He moved to the sink, started washing the blood off his hands with methodical precision. I didn't do it for gratitude. I did it because someone needed to teach him that women aren't property. Did he suffer? Nico looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw understanding in his eyes. Yes. Good. The word should have shamed me. I was supposed to be better than that, wasn't I? Supposed to be above revenge and violence. But I wasn't. I was just a woman with a broken arm and cracked ribs who was tired of pretending mercy was the same thing as weakness. You're different than I expected, Nico said, drying his hands on a towel. How so? Stronger. Most people in your situation would be falling apart right now. You're standing in a stranger's apartment asking if your ex-boyfriend suffered, and meaning it. Maybe I'm tired of being the kind of person things happen to, I said. Maybe I want to be the kind of person who makes things happen instead. Something shifted in his expression, intense and almost predatory. Careful, Emma. That's a dangerous way to think. I'm already in danger. At least this way, I'm choosing it. He crossed to me in 2 strides, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. You know what I am, he said. Not a question. What my family does. I have some idea. And you're not afraid of me? I considered the question honestly. I should be. But no. You've had a dozen chances to hurt me, and instead you've done nothing but try to help. That could change. His voice dropped lower. I'm not a good man, Emma. I've done things that would horrify you. Hurt people. Destroyed lives. Made decisions that kept me awake at night. You should be afraid of me. Maybe I'm done being afraid, I whispered. We stood there in the quiet apartment, something electric building between us. Then Nico stepped back, breaking the moment with visible effort. You should get some rest, he said, his voice rough. I'll be in the guest room if you need anything. He left before I could respond, and I stood there wondering what would have happened if he'd stayed. The next 2 weeks developed a rhythm. Nico came by every morning with breakfast, always something from a different bakery, like he was trying to figure out which one I liked best. He'd check on my arm, make sure I had everything I needed, and tell me what was happening in the outside world. Marcus had pressed charges, claiming I'd been kidnapped. The charges disappeared within 24 hours. My apartment had been cleared out, my lease terminated with 0 penalties. My boss at the bookstore had called, completely understanding about my family emergency, and assured me my job would be waiting whenever I was ready to come back. Everything in my life was being rearranged, and I should have resented it. I didn't. Tell me about your family, I said one morning, watching Nico pour espresso into small cups. Why do you want to know? Because you know everything about me, and I know nothing about you except that you're terrifying and surprisingly thoughtful. He smiled at that, a real smile that softened his face. My father built the family business from nothing. He came here from Sicily with $100 and a willingness to work. By the time I was born, he owned half the docks and most of the construction contracts in the city. And the illegal stuff? That too, he admitted. We run gambling, protection, some import-export that customs doesn't need to know about. But we're not monsters, Emma. We have rules. We don't deal drugs, don't traffic people, don't hurt civilians who haven't earned it. Who decides what earned it means? Usually me. He met my eyes. I'm being groomed to take over when my father retires. That means making hard decisions. Protecting our territory, our people, our interests. Sometimes that means violence. Sometimes that means worse. And you're okay with that? I don't know if okay is the right word, but it's the life I was born into, the responsibility I carry. My family depends on me. The people who work for us, who trust us to keep them safe, depend on me. I can't afford to be soft. You're soft with me, I pointed out. His expression shifted, intense and possessive. That's different. Why? Because you're different. He set down his cup. I've been around violence my whole life, Emma. I've seen what cruelty looks like, what real evil does to people. And then I watched you walk to work every morning with a smile, like the world hadn't tried to break you yet. You were this light, this proof that there were still good things worth protecting. And then I saw the bruises, and I knew someone was trying to steal that light, and He stopped, jaw tight. You what? I wanted to kill him, he said simply. The first time I saw you limping, favoring your right side, I wanted to find whoever did it and make them disappear. And that's when I knew I was in trouble, because I don't feel that way about people. I don't get invested. But you, You got under my skin before I knew it was happening. My heart hammered against my ribs. Nico, I'm not asking for anything, he said quickly. I know this situation is fucked up. You're vulnerable, you're healing, and I'm the person keeping you safe. That means I need to keep my distance, maintain boundaries. I needed you to know. You're not just another responsibility to me. You matter. I stood up, crossed to where he sat, and before I could second-guess myself, I kissed him. It was awkward with my cast, tentative because I didn't know if I was reading everything wrong, but the moment my lips touched his, Nico made a sound low in his throat and kissed me back. His hand came up to cup my face with aching gentleness, like I was something precious that might break. When we finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, his eyes had gone dark. Emma, he said, voice rough, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. I took a shaky breath. I've spent 6 months having someone make choices for me, take my control, make me feel small. You're not doing that. You're asking. You're giving me the power to decide. So I'm deciding. I want this. I want you. You're sure? Completely. He kissed me again, deeper this time, and I felt something inside me that had been locked away for months finally start to thaw. We didn't take it further. My injuries made anything more complicated, and Nico seemed determined to take things slow. But we spent the rest of the morning on the couch, talking and kissing and learning the shape of this new thing building between us. It was perfect, until his father disappeared. The call came 3 days later. I was reading in the living room when Nico burst through the door, his face pale and set in lines of fury and fear I'd never seen before. What happened? I was on my feet immediately. My father. He's gone. Nico's hands were shaking as he pulled out his phone. He left the estate this morning for a meeting. Never arrived. His car was found abandoned on Route 9 with blood on the driver's seat. Oh my God. Do you know who? The Castellanos. He spat the name like poison. They've been pushing into our territory for months. This is a declaration of war. What can I do? He looked at me like he'd forgotten I was there. Nothing. You stay here where it's safe. Tony's downstairs. He won't let anyone get to you. Nico, wait. But he was already gone, the door slamming behind him. I stood there in the sudden silence, my mind racing. The Castellano family. I'd heard that name before, hadn't I? Marcus had mentioned it once, saying his firm did work for them. Oh no. I grabbed my phone and pulled up the browser, typing frantically with my good hand. Marcus Webb, Castellano family, finance. The articles loaded slowly. Too slowly, but when they did, my blood went cold. Marcus's financial firm managed investments for the Castellano family, had been doing so for the past 2 years, and 3 weeks ago there had been a closed-door meeting between senior Castellano members and several financial advisors, including Marcus. 3 weeks ago. Right before Nico had started paying attention to me. Right before Marcus had gotten worse. I thought about Marcus's rage that final night, the way he'd screamed about me ruining everything. At the time, I'd thought he meant our relationship. But what if he'd meant something else? What if the Castellanos had been watching Nico, seen him interested in me, and told Marcus to use me as leverage? What if Dominic's disappearance was my fault? I called Nico. It went to voicemail. I tried again, and again. Finally, I called the only other number I had. Tony, I need you to take me to Nico. Now. Miss Richardson, I have orders to keep you here. Tony, I think I know why the Castellanos took Dominic. And if I'm right, Nico's about to walk into a trap. There was a pause. Then, I'll bring the car around. The Salvatore estate was chaos. Men in suits moved with purpose through the halls, voices tense and low. Tony led me through the crowd to a study where Nico stood over a map with 3 other men, his face a mask of controlled rage. Hit them at the warehouse, he was saying. Fast and hard, make them understand. Nico. I stepped into the room and every head turned. Don't go to the warehouse. Emma, what the fuck are you doing here? Tony, I told you. It's a trap, I interrupted. The warehouse is a trap. They want you to come in angry and reckless. They're expecting you. How do you possibly know that? Because Marcus was working with them. I moved closer, ignoring the stares from the other men. His firm handles Castellano Investments. 3 weeks ago they had a meeting, right before Marcus got worse, right before he broke my arm. I think they told him to escalate, to make sure I'd need help, to make sure you'd notice. Nico's expression shifted from anger to understanding. They were using you to bait me. And using me to distract you, I continued. While you were protecting me, dealing with Marcus, they were planning this. They took your father to draw you out. They're counting on you being emotional, making mistakes. One of the other men spoke up. The girl has a point. Castellano wouldn't grab Dominic without an endgame. They'd want to take out both Salvatores at once. So, what do you suggest? Nico's voice was tight. We sit here while my father... No, we're smarter than they are. I looked at the map, saw the warehouse marked in red. They expect you at the warehouse, so you don't go there. You send men to the warehouse as a distraction while you hit them somewhere else. Where would they actually be holding him? Nico stared at me for a long moment, then turned to one of the men. Carlo, the Castellano properties. Where would they take a hostage they wanted to keep alive? The restaurant, Carlo said immediately. Giancarlo's downtown. They own the building. There's a basement, multiple exits. It's their headquarters. That's where he'll be. Nico was already moving, giving orders with sharp precision. Marco, take 12 men to the warehouse. Make them think we bought it. Carlo, you're with me. We're going to Giancarlo's. I'm coming too, I said. Absolutely not. Nico. Emma, no. He gripped my shoulders carefully, mindful of my cast. You've done enough. You probably just saved my life and my father's. But I'm not bringing you into a firefight. Then end it fast, I said quietly, and come back to me. Something fierce and possessive blazed in his eyes. Then he kissed me hard, fast, and was gone. The waiting was torture. I sat in the study with Tony standing guard, watching the clock tick by with agonizing slowness. An hour passed, then 2. I imagined every worst-case scenario, pictured Nico bleeding out in some basement, pictured myself alone again, because I'd let myself hope for something better. When the door finally opened, I nearly collapsed with relief. Nico walked in supporting his father, both of them bruised and bloodied, but alive. Dominic had a cut over his eye and what looked like bruised ribs, but he was conscious and walking, and the smile on his face when he saw me was genuine. So, you're the one who figured out Castellano's plan, he said, wincing as Nico helped him into a chair. My son told me on the drive over. That was smart thinking, Emma. I just connected some dots, I said, but I was looking at Nico, cataloging his injuries. Split knuckles, bruise forming on his cheekbone, but otherwise intact. Are you okay? Better now. He crossed to me, pulled me close despite the audience. You were right. They had 20 men at the warehouse, only 3 at the restaurant. We got my father out, and Castellano learned what happens when you come after my family. What about Marcus? Nico's expression went cold. Marcus won't be a problem anymore, for anyone. I didn't ask for details, didn't need them. Good. Dominic watched us with knowing eyes. Nico, I think you and I need to have a conversation about where this is going. Not now, Dad. Yes, now. The older man's voice carried authority despite his injuries. You've put this girl in danger. You've brought her into our world, given her knowledge she can't unknow. So what are your intentions? Dominic, it's okay, I started. It's not. Nico cut me off, his jaw set. My father's right. I've been selfish. I wanted to protect you, but I also wanted to keep you close, and I didn't think about what that would cost you. What are you saying? I'm saying you deserve better than this. Better than looking over your shoulder, wondering if my enemies will use you to get to me. Better than living in a safe house, dependent on my protection. His voice roughened. I'm saying I care about you too much to trap you in my life. And if I want to be trapped? The words came out stronger than I felt. Nico, I've spent 3 years with someone who made me small, who took my choices away. You've done the opposite. You've given me power, safety, respect. You've shown me what it feels like to be valued, so don't you dare try to make this decision for me. Emma, I know what you are, I continued. I know what your family does, and I'm choosing you anyway. I'm choosing this life, this protection, this partnership, unless you don't want me, in which case, just say so. Don't want you? He laughed, but it sounded broken. Emma, I'm half in love with you. That's the problem. You deserve someone who can give you a normal life. I don't want normal. Normal is what I had with Marcus. Normal is what almost killed me. I stepped closer, rising on my toes to meet his eyes. I want extraordinary. I want someone who looks at me like I'm worth protecting. I want to feel the way I do when I'm with you. So stop trying to push me away and just let me stay. Nico looked at his father. Dominic smiled, a real smile that softened his bruised face. Don't look at me. I asked your mother to marry me after knowing her for 6 weeks. If you found someone worth keeping, you keep them. She deserves better than she deserves to make her own choices, Dominic interrupted. And she's choosing you. Don't be stupid enough to argue with that. Nico turned back to me, and I saw the moment he stopped fighting. You're sure about this? Completely. Because once you're mine, Emma, I don't let go. That's not how I'm built. You'd be part of this family, part of this life, with everything that means. The danger, the secrecy, the complications, and I'd be possessive and overprotective and probably drive you crazy. I can live with that. Can you? He cupped my face with both hands, gentle despite the violence still humming through him. Because I need you to understand what you're agreeing to. I'm not offering you romance and flowers. I'm offering you protection and partnership and a place at my side. I'm offering you my name, my family, everything I have. But I'm also offering you my darkness, my enemies, my choices. You'd be tied to me in ways that can't be undone. Is that a proposal? Maybe. His thumb brushed my cheek. If I were proposing, I'd do it properly. Ring, speech, the whole thing. This is just me making sure you know what you're getting into. Then make sure, I challenged. Tell me exactly what you're offering. His eyes blazed. Everything. My protection, always. My respect, constantly. My loyalty, absolutely. My name, if you'll take it. My life, intertwined with yours so completely that your enemies become my enemies, and your victories become my victories. His voice dropped lower, intimate despite his father's presence. My heart, Emma, even though I don't know when you stole it. I'm offering you everything I am, everything I have, if you're brave enough to take it. The words should have terrified me. I'd known this man for 3 weeks. This was too fast, too intense, too dangerous. But I'd spent 3 years being careful, being cautious, trying to earn love through compliance. And where had that gotten me? Broken bones and broken spirit, and a life that had been slowly crushing me under its weight. Nico was offering me something different. Not safety from the world. I'd learned there was no such thing. But safety with him. Partnership. Power. A place to stand and fight instead of just surviving. Yes, I said simply. Yes to what? To everything. Protection, partnership, your name if you're offering. All of it. Nico kissed me then, deep and claiming, like he was sealing a promise that couldn't be broken. When we finally pulled apart, Dominic was smiling. Welcome to the family, Emma, he said warmly. You'll fit in perfectly. The next 2 months were a whirlwind. Nico made good on his promise. He proposed. Properly 3 weeks later, with a ring that was probably worth more than my car, and a speech that made me cry. We were married in a small ceremony at the family estate, with Dominic walking me down the aisle and half the city's power players in attendance. I went back to work at the bookstore because I wanted to. But now I had a discreet security detail and the knowledge that nobody would dare touch me. I became part of the Salvatore family, learning the business, meeting the people they protected, understanding the careful balance of power that kept their world running. It wasn't always easy. There were threats, close calls, nights when Nico came home with blood on his hands and darkness in his eyes. But there were also mornings waking up next to someone who looked at me like I was precious. Family dinners full of laughter and warmth, the fierce pride in Nico's eyes when I negotiated my first business deal on behalf of the family. I'd thought Marcus breaking my arm was the worst night of my life. Instead, it was the beginning of everything. Because without that night, I never would have met Nico. Never would have learned that I was strong enough to choose my own fate. Never would have found this partnership, this power, this fierce and complicated love. 6 months after our wedding, I stood in Nico's study watching him work, my hand resting on my growing belly. Our baby would be born into this world of power and danger and fiercely protective love. They'd be taught to respect strength, to value loyalty, to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. "What are you thinking about?" Nico asked, looking up from his papers. "How far we've come," I said honestly. 6 months ago, I was lying in a hospital bed trying to convince myself my broken arm was an accident. Now I'm here, married to a man who looks at me like I'm the center of his world, carrying his baby, part of an empire. It's surreal. Regrets? Not a single one. I crossed to him, let him pull me into his lap. "You promised me everything, Nico Salvatore. And you delivered." "Good." His hand splayed over my belly, possessive and gentle. "Because you're stuck with me now, Mrs. Salvatore. No escape." "Who said I want to escape?" I kissed him softly. I found exactly what I was looking for. I just didn't know I was looking for it. He smiled against my lips, and in that moment I knew this was where I was meant to be. Not in spite of the danger, the complications, the unconventional nature of our partnership, but because of it. Because sometimes love doesn't come in a safe, expected package. Sometimes it comes in the form of a man with winter eyes asking who broke your arm, and meaning it when he promises no one will hurt you again. Sometimes the person who saves you isn't a hero. Sometimes he's just a man willing to burn the world down to keep you safe. And sometimes that's exactly what you need. What I didn't know was that peace in our world never lasted long. It started with a phone call at 3 a.m. Nico's phone vibrating on the nightstand pulled me from sleep, and I felt him tense beside me before he even looked at the screen. Nobody called at 3 a.m. with good news. "What is it?" he answered, his voice already hard. I couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but I watched his face go from alert to furious in the span of seconds. He was out of bed before he hung up, pulling on clothes with sharp, angry movements. "Nico, what's wrong?" "The warehouse on Pier 12. Someone torched it." He was strapping on a shoulder holster, checking his weapon with practiced efficiency. 3 of our men were inside. Carlo got them out, but one's in critical condition. "Who would—" "I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out." He paused long enough to kiss me, his hand lingering on my face. "Stay here. Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone but me or my father. Be careful." "Always am." But the look in his eyes said this was different. This was personal. He left, and I sat in our bedroom, listening to the house settle into silence around me. 6 months of marriage had taught me that being part of this family meant living with fear as a constant companion. But it also meant trusting that Nico knew how to handle himself, that he'd come back to me like he always did. I should have known it wouldn't be that simple. The next call came at dawn. This time it was Dominic, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. "Emma, I need you to listen carefully. Pack a bag. Tony's coming to get you in 10 minutes. You're going to the country house." "What?" "Dominic, what's happening?" The fire wasn't random. It was a message, and we just found out who sent it. He paused, and I heard something in his voice I'd never heard before. Fear. "It's Nico's uncle, Emma. Vincent. He's back, and he's making a play for control of the family." My blood went cold. I'd heard about Vincent Salvatore in whispers, usually late at night when the family thought I wasn't listening. Dominic's younger brother, charming and vicious in equal measure, who'd been exiled 15 years ago for trying to take over the family business. He'd disappeared into Europe, and everyone had assumed he'd either gotten himself killed or had the sense to stay gone. Apparently, they'd assumed wrong. Where's Nico? Handling it, but Vincent knows about you, knows you're pregnant. He'll use you to get to Nico if he can. So you need to disappear until we sort this out. I'm not running! The words came out before I could think them through. If Vincent wants to target me, then we use that. Emma, no. Nico would kill me if I let you anywhere near this. Nico doesn't get to make that choice for me. I was already out of bed, pulling clothes from the closet with my free hand. My cast had come off 2 weeks ago, and I was still getting used to having both arms functional again. I'm part of this family. That means I don't hide when things get dangerous. It means I stand with you. You're pregnant. I'm 3 months along and perfectly capable of thinking strategically. I stopped, took a breath, tried to sound calmer than I felt. Dominic, you said Vincent knows about me. That means he's been watching us, gathering information. What else does he know? There was a pause. Everything, probably. He's had people embedded in our organization for months. We're still figuring out who's loyal and who's been feeding him intelligence. Then he knows your routines, your properties, your security protocols. The country house isn't safe. It's predictable. He'll expect you to send me there. Another pause, longer this time. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we do what Nico did when the Castellanos took you. We give Vincent what he expects while we do something different. My mind was racing, connecting pieces the way I'd learned to over the past 6 months. Send Tony to the country house with a decoy. Make it look like I'm running scared. Meanwhile, I stay here, hidden, and we wait to see who makes a move. That's dangerous. Everything about this life is dangerous. At least this way, we control some of the variables. I heard muffled conversation on the other end. Then Dominic came back. Nico's going to be furious with both of us. Probably. But he'll be alive to be furious. And so will I. That's what matters. The plan came together quickly. Tony left with a woman roughly my size, bundled into the back of Nico's car, heading for the country house with an escort of 4 armed men. I watched from the bedroom window as they pulled away, then turned to find Dominic standing in the doorway. There's a safe room in the basement, he said. Reinforced walls, separate ventilation, enough supplies for a week. If things go wrong, show me. He led me through the house to a door I'd always assumed was a closet. Behind it, stairs descended into darkness. The safe room was exactly what he'd described. Small but functional, with water, food, medical supplies, and enough weapons to outfit a small army. You know how to shoot? Dominic asked, pulling a compact pistol from a locked cabinet. Nico's been teaching me. I took the weapon, checked it the way he'd shown me, clicked the safety on. I'm not great, but I can hit what I'm aiming at if it's close enough. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. He handed me a phone, different from my normal one. This is secure. Only 3 people have the number. Me, Nico, and Carlo. If anyone else calls, don't answer. We went back upstairs to wait. Dominic made coffee with steady hands, while I tried not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. An hour passed, then 2. The secure phone stayed silent. Tell me about Vincent, I said finally, unable to bear the quiet anymore. What kind of man are we dealing with? Dominic's expression darkened. The kind who thinks loyalty is weakness, and family is just another resource to exploit. He's smart, charismatic, and absolutely ruthless. When he made his first play for control, he tried to have me killed. Nico was 19, home from college. He's the one who figured out what Vincent was planning. The one who confronted him. He stared into his coffee cup. Vincent laughed, said Nico didn't have the stomach for what needed to be done. Then Nico broke his jaw and 3 ribs, and told him if he ever came back he'd kill him himself. But you exiled him instead. I did. Vincent's still my brother, and back then, I thought family meant something to him. I was wrong. He looked at me. If he gets his hands on you, Emma, he won't hesitate to use you in the worst ways possible. Not because he has anything against you personally, but because you're leverage. You're how he gets to Nico, and through Nico, to me. Then we make sure he doesn't get his hands on me. The secure phone rang before Dominic could respond. He answered immediately, listened, then went very still. Understood. We're ready. He hung up and looked at me. Vincent just made contact. He wants a meeting, neutral territory. He's offering to leave peacefully if we give him control of the European operations. It's a trap, obviously, but it's also an opening. Nico's going to the meeting with 12 men. While Vincent's focused on that, we're going to hit his base of operations here in the city. Where is he staying? The Windsor Hotel, penthouse suite. He's not even trying to hide. He thinks he's untouchable. Dominic's smile was cold. He's about to learn different. The next few hours were tense. I stayed in the house with 2 guards while Dominic coordinated the response to Vincent's play. The secure phone rang periodically with updates. Nico had arrived at the meeting location. Vincent had shown up with his own security detail. They were talking. Each update told me my husband was still alive, still in control, but doing nothing to ease the knot of fear in my stomach. Then everything went to hell. The explosion rattled the windows hard enough that I thought they'd shatter. I was on my feet instantly, the pistol in my hand, looking to the guards for explanation. One of them was already on his radio, his face grim. "The Windsor Hotel," he said. "Someone just bombed the penthouse." My blood turned to ice. Dominic was going to hit Vincent's base there. I know. He listened to his radio again, then looked at me with something like pity. "Multiple casualties. They're still assessing." The next 20 minutes were the longest of my life. I stood in the living room, weapon ready, waiting for news that might destroy me. If Dominic had been in that building when it exploded, if this had all been part of Vincent's trap, if Nico came home to find his father dead because I'd convinced them to change the plan. The secure phone rang. I answered before the first ring finished. "Hello?" "Emma." Nico's voice tight with fury and fear. "Are you safe?" "Yes, I'm at the house with guards. Nico, the explosion was meant for us. Vincent tipped someone off about the raid, rigged the penthouse to blow. But my father wasn't there yet. He was still coordinating from the car when it went off. He's fine." I nearly collapsed with relief. "And you?" "I'm done playing games." Something deadly hummed beneath his words. Vincent thought he could use you to control me. Thought I'd negotiate if he threatened what's mine. He was wrong. I'm coming home, Emma. And then I'm ending this. He hung up before I could respond. I looked at the guards, both of them listening to their own communications, and saw their expressions shift from tense to determined. "What's happening?" "Mr. Salvatore just gave the order," one of them said. "Every Salvatore soldier in the city is being activated. We're going to war." War came fast and brutal. Through the windows I could hear sirens in the distance, see smoke rising from multiple points across the skyline. The secure phone rang constantly with updates. Vincent's men hid at the docks, 3 of them dead, the rest scattered. A shootout at one of the gambling houses, 5 casualties, all Vincent's people. The Salvatore family moving through the city like a surgical strike, dismantling Vincent's operation piece by piece. Nico came home just after midnight, covered in blood that I desperately hoped wasn't his. He pulled me into his arms the moment he walked through the door, held me so tight I could barely breathe. "It's over," he said into my hair. "Vincent's dead. His people are either running or dead with him. It's over." "Are you hurt?" "No." He pulled back enough to cut my face, and I saw the familiar darkness in his eyes that came after violence. "But I need you to understand something, Emma. What I did tonight, what I'm capable of when someone threatens you, it's not pretty. It's not justified or noble. I killed my own uncle because he thought he could use you against me. I didn't hesitate. I didn't feel guilty. I would do it again in a heartbeat. Good, I said simply. He blinked, surprised. Good? You think I don't know what you are by now? You think I married you expecting some sanitized version of this life? I pressed my hand over his heart, felt it hammering beneath my palm. You protected your family. You protected me. You did what needed to be done. I'm not going to condemn you for that. Even knowing I killed my own blood? Vincent stopped being family the moment he threatened us. You said it yourself. In this world, you protect what's yours, or you lose everything. I rose on my toes to kiss him. I'm yours, Nico Salvatore. And you're mine. That means we protect each other, no matter what it costs. Something in his expression broke, and he kissed me like he was trying to prove I was real, that I was still here, that Vincent hadn't succeeded in taking me away. When we finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, his hand moved to my stomach. Our baby, he said quietly. They're going to grow up in this world, Emma. They're going to see things, learn things, maybe have to do things that other children never face. Are you ready for that? Are you? I don't know. My father raised me to take over the family business, but he also tried to shield me from the worst of it until I was old enough to understand. I want to do the same for our child, but I also know that protection and preparation are two different things. Then we'll figure it out together. I covered his hand with mine. We'll teach them to be strong without being cruel, to value loyalty and family, to protect people who can't protect themselves. We'll raise them in this world, but not let this world define them. You make it sound simple. Nothing about this is simple, but we don't have to figure it all out tonight. I leaned into him, letting his warmth chase away the lingering fear. Tonight, we're both alive, both safe, and the threat is gone. That's enough. He held me for a long time, neither of us speaking, just existing in the quiet knowledge that we'd survived. Again. That we'd face whatever came next the same way we'd faced everything else. Together. The next morning, I woke to find the other side of the bed empty. For a moment, panic seized me. Then I heard voices downstairs. I pulled on a robe and found Nico in the kitchen with his father, both of them looking exhausted but alive. Dominic's arm was in a sling, and he had new bandages on his face, but he smiled when he saw me. Emma, how are you feeling? Better now that you're both here. I moved to Nico's side, and he automatically made space for me, one arm coming around my waist. What happens now? Now we rebuild, Dominic said. Vincent had more support than we realized. We've spent the night identifying everyone who was working with him, making decisions about who stays and who goes. It's going to take time to stabilize everything. But we will stabilize it, Nico added. Vincent's gone, his allies are scattered, and everyone in this city just got a very clear message about what happens when you come after the Salvatore family. And Emma? Dominic looked at me with something like respect. Thank you. The decoy plan worked perfectly. Vincent's people followed Tony to the country house, which meant we knew exactly who in our organization was feeding information to the other side. We wouldn't have identified them so quickly without your idea. I'm just glad everyone made it out alive. Not everyone, Nico said quietly. We lost 2 good men in the fighting. Men with families, who trusted us to keep them safe. The weight of that settled over the kitchen. This was the other side of victory. The cost paid by people who'd done nothing wrong except be loyal. I thought about those families, suddenly without fathers or brothers or sons, and felt the familiar guilt of survival. We'll take care of them, Dominic said, reading my expression. Their families will never want for anything. Their children's education, their mortgages, everything. We handle it. That's what family means. Over the next few weeks, life slowly returned to something resembling normal. The fires were extinguished, the damage repaired, the power structure reestablished. Nico threw himself into rebuilding with single-minded intensity, working 18-hour days to shore up relationships and demonstrate strength. I did what I could to help, meeting with the wives and mothers of the men we'd lost, sitting with them through their grief, making sure they understood they weren't alone. It was brutal, heartbreaking work, but it was also necessary. These women had lost people they loved because of decisions our family had made. The least I could do was bear witness to their pain. 3 months later, I stood in our bedroom getting ready for a family dinner, my growing belly now impossible to hide. Nico came up behind me, his hands settling on my stomach with infinite gentleness. "You're beautiful," he said quietly. "I know I don't say it enough, but you are, especially like this. Getting fat? Growing our child." He kissed my neck. "Building our future, being stronger than anyone I've ever met." "I'm not that strong." "You are. You stood with us through a war, Emma. You made decisions that saved lives. You comforted families who'd lost everything. You're exactly as strong as I always knew you were." I turned in his arms, studying his face. The past months had left their marks. New lines around his eyes, a weariness that hadn't been there before. "Do you ever regret it? Bringing me into this world?" "Every day," he admitted. "And not at all. You deserve better than what I can give you. You deserve a life without violence, without fear, without having to watch me leave wondering if I'll come back. But I'm also too selfish to let you go. You're mine, Emma, and I'm keeping you. Good, because I'm not going anywhere." I kissed him softly. "We're in this together, remember? For better or worse. And I'd say we've already survived the worst." "Don't say that. You'll jinx us." "There's no such thing as jinxes, just choices and consequences." I took his hand, placed it over our baby's movements. "And I choose this. Every single day, I choose you, this family, this complicated, dangerous, beautiful life. So stop waiting for me to regret it." He smiled then, real and warm, and pulled me close. "I love you." "I love you, too." That night, surrounded by family, I looked around the dinner table and realized how far I'd come. From a woman with a broken arm lying in a hospital bed to this, a wife, a soon-to-be mother, a valued member of one of the most powerful families in the city. It hadn't been easy. It hadn't been safe. But it had been worth it. Because sometimes the worst night of your life is actually the doorway to everything you never knew you needed. And sometimes the man who asks who broke your arm with murder in his eyes is exactly the man who will teach you what it means to be truly, fiercely loved. 4 months later, I gave birth to a daughter with her father's gray eyes, and what the nurses swore was already a stubborn expression. Nico held her like she was made of glass, tears streaming down his face, and promised her a world where she'd never have to be afraid. I didn't have the heart to tell him that was impossible. Our daughter would grow up in a world of power and danger, of difficult choices and complicated loyalties. But she'd also grow up surrounded by fierce love, by parents who'd fight the world to keep her safe, by a family that understood the true meaning of protection. And in the end, maybe that was enough.